Section 2.2.9. The Juvenile Justice System. Hello, I'm Dr. Adam McKee, and today we're diving into the fascinating evolution of the juvenile justice system, a key topic from my book, Criminal Justice, an overview of the system. We'll explore how the system has changed over time, shifting its focus from punishment to rehabilitation, and the various influences that have shaped these changes. Let's get started. During the 1800s, there was a significant shift in how the United States approached juvenile delinquency. This shift moved away from treating juveniles like adults. As early as 1825, the Society for the Prevention of Juvenile Delinquency began promoting the idea of separate facilities for juvenile offenders. Initially, private facilities were created, but they soon faced criticism for alleged abuses. This led many states to establish their own juvenile detention facilities to provide a more structured and state-regulated approach. Not only were detention facilities changing, but the entire system was evolving. In 1899, Illinois passed the Juvenile Court Act, creating America's first juvenile court. This court was based on the British policy of parens patriae, meaning the government acted as a parent. Essentially, the state took responsibility to intervene when natural parents failed to discipline and protect their children. The juvenile court focused on the welfare of the child, aiming to rehabilitate delinquent youths through treatment rather than punishing them like adult offenders. By 1910, 32 states had established juvenile courts, and most had probation services. By 1925, all but 2 states had laid the foundations of a juvenile justice system. Juvenile courts handled cases involving accused individuals under 18 years old. Unlike adult courts, these juvenile courts were not adversarial, meaning prosecutors were not responsible for bringing cases before the court. Juvenile courts often considered extra-legal factors when deciding how to deal with a particular case. They used intake procedures that allowed for the informal diversion of youthful offenders, where no formal judicial action was taken. Juvenile proceedings were much less formal than adult trials because the court used the best interest of the child standard. The juvenile court had many dispositions available to help rehabilitate delinquent youths. The doctrine of proportionality did not apply, meaning the child could receive anything from a verbal warning to being locked up in a secure detention facility. Rehabilitation would continue until the child was cured or became an adult. However, by the 1960s, many people became disillusioned with the juvenile court's ability to rehabilitate youths effectively. Despite this, the juvenile court's underlying assumptions about the individualized treatment of delinquent youths were not widely challenged. The United States Supreme Court believed that children should be afforded many of the same constitutional safeguards as adult offenders. As a result, the Supreme Court made several rulings in a short span of time that protected these rights. The formalization of the juvenile court resulted in delinquents being guaranteed the right to an attorney, protection against self-incrimination, and the right to receive notice of the charges. The standard of proof changed from a preponderance of the evidence to beyond a reasonable doubt in juvenile cases. Deinstitutionalization was a significant movement in the historical development of the juvenile justice system in the United States. It aimed to reduce the reliance on large-scale institutions, such as detention centers and reform schools, and instead promote community-based alternatives for juvenile offenders. The movement began in the 1960s and gained momentum in the 1970s when critics argued that institutionalizing youth resulted in physical and emotional abuse, neglect, and ineffective rehabilitation. As a result, many states closed large juvenile institutions and replaced them with smaller, community-based programs that offered various services, such as counseling, education, and vocational training. Deinstitutionalization represents a significant shift in the juvenile justice system's philosophy from punishment to rehabilitation, emphasizing individualized treatment and community-based support. The Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Act of 1968 was enacted to support state and local juvenile delinquency prevention programs. The act aimed to prevent young people from becoming involved in delinquent behaviors by funding community-based programs focused on youth development and diversion from the juvenile justice system. The act also established the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, OJJDP, to provide leadership and coordination in the national effort to prevent and respond to juvenile delinquency. In the 1980s, the public perceived that serious juvenile crime was rising and that the juvenile courts were too lenient on offenders. This led many states to pass more punitive laws. Some removed certain classes of offenders from the juvenile system and placed them in the adult system. Others revamped their juvenile courts to operate more like adult courts. As a result, offenders charged with certain offenses were excluded from juvenile court jurisdiction or faced mandatory waivers to criminal court. In the 1990s, every state modified the juvenile justice system, and these modifications varied widely. Most states made it easier to transfer juveniles from the juvenile justice system to the criminal justice system. They also gave criminal and juvenile courts expanded sentencing options. Most legislatures also modified or removed traditional juvenile court confidentiality provisions by making records and proceedings more open to the public. The evolution of the juvenile justice system in the United States has been marked by significant changes, as policymakers and practitioners have sought to balance the protection of society with the rehabilitation of youthful offenders. Today, many states have implemented various programs, such as restorative justice initiatives, diversion programs, and evidence-based treatment programs, to reduce recidivism rates among juvenile offenders and help them reintegrate into their communities. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, leave them in the comments below. See you next time.